How does an Iowa-born mechanical engineer meet and marry a Russian medical student in the middle of Siberia? How does a former linebacker for the University of Iowa end up designing boiler plants for the Russian government? This is the story of Charles Schmidt and Vera Borzova, the story of how two polar opposite paths intersected on one auspicious occasion. My father, Charles Matthew Schmidt, was born on April 29th, 1937, in Charles City, Iowa. His father, Earl Matthew Schmidt, owned a small plumbing and heating company in Charles City. Two themes emerged in Charles's life from a young age: engineering and football. Since he was a young boy, he enjoyed playing sports: football, baseball, and basketball. However, as he grew older, he began to specialize in football, culminating in playing linebacker for the University of Iowa Hawkeyes. As he grew up watching his father work as a contractor, building the designs of engineers, he decided that he was going to become an engineer himself. Earl Matthew Schmidt was born on October 8th, 1908, in Charles City, Iowa, to Matthew Schmidt and Viola Woods. He married Amy Corinne Anderson on June 7th, 1931, in Nashua, Iowa. Together, they had two children, Charles Schmidt and Joanne Schmidt. Both Earl and Amy only completed high school. Joanne and Charles became the first members of their family to earn a college degree. Charles grew up in a family of modest means. Earl worked 60 hours per week for 52 weeks in 1939. However, their home on Missouri Avenue was worth $2,500 in 1940, equivalent to under $46,000 today, according to an online inflation calculator. Earl Schmidt died on December 9th, 1969, in his hometown at the age of 61. Both he and Amy Anderson were buried in Charles City. Earl's father, Matthew Schmidt, was born in 1859 in Calumet, Wisconsin, to Carl Schmidt and Emmeline Westphal. He married Viola Woods in 1888. Viola was born in Pleasant Grove, Iowa, on January 5th, 1869, to Daniel Buchanan Woods and Maria Chowder. However, her family had roots in Tennessee and Kentucky, dating back to the 18th century. Together, Matthew and Viola had two children, a daughter named Ivy, born in January of 1891, and Earl. It is likely that the Adam Forepaugh and Sells Brothers Circus awed Matthew and Viola when they performed in Charles City, Iowa, in 1910. The circus toured around the United States and included acts such as dancing elephants, aerialists, and trained sea lions. In 1928, Viola Woods passed away at the age of 59. Matthew and Viola had been married for 40 years. Then, on May 5th, 1931, Matthew Schmidt died in Charles City, Iowa, at the age of 72. One story claims that he was found on the floor when his housekeeper returned from an errand after suffering from heart trouble. Both Matthew and Viola are buried in Riverside Cemetery in Charles City. Daniel Buchanan Woods, the father of Viola Woods, was born on March 12th, 1828, in Monroe, Tennessee. He married Maria Chowder on July 8th, 1851, in Joe Davis, Illinois, when he was 23 years old. According to census data from the 1880 United States Federal Census, the Woods family lived in Pleasant Grove, Iowa. On December 1st, 1889, Maria passed away in Floyd, Iowa, at the age of 55. Daniel and Maria had been married for 38 years. On April 23rd, 1893, he also passed away in Floyd, Iowa, when he was 65 years old. On the other side of the world, a girl was born in a family with extensive Russian roots. Vera Borzova was born on January 27th, 1968, in Novokuznetsk, Russia, to Valery Borzov and Evgenia Tutushkina. Valery Ivanovich Borzov was born on April 25th, 1943, in Novokuznetsk, Russia, to Ivan Borzov and Maria Yablokova during World War II. After high school, Valery served in the Soviet Army in modern-day Kazakhstan and worked on military nuclear reactors. After his military service, He studied electrical engineering at the Novokuznetsk Metallurgical Institute and lived in an apartment with his parents in Novokuznetsk at the time. He met my grandmother, Evgenia, while walking past her in the apartment's first-floor hallway. After gathering his group of friends to assist him, Valery climbed through the window in Evgenia's apartment. For the next year, they saw each other every single day. On June 19th, 1967, they were married in Novokuznetsk. After their marriage, Valery wanted to provide for his new family, and his first goal was to acquire an apartment. At the time, there was a severe shortage of apartments in the Soviet Union, and nobody could own their apartment. Apartments were exchanged. If a family from Novokuznetsk wanted to move to Moscow, they had to find a person that was willing to move into their apartment in Novokuznetsk. Valery got a job as an electrical engineer with a state company that provided their employees with an apartment. His next goal was to have a car, in a time when the vast majority of Soviet citizens did not own a car. He ended up spending 2 years without his family in Spitsbergen, working in the coal mines and saving every penny to get the smallest and cheapest car available. After the car, Valery felt a calling to move his family to Moscow, where his family's property was confiscated by the government after the Russian Revolution, and part of his family was exiled to Siberia. This dream never materialized. In 2004, he came to the United States to help raise his grandchildren. In 2015, Valery passed away, losing his battle to cancer. Evgenia Vladimirovna Tutushkina was born on May 9th, 1945 in Irkutsk, Russia, to Vladimir Tutushkin and Lukiria Safonova. The circumstances of her birth were highly unusual. She was born on Victory Day in a rail car, accompanying her father who was rebuilding bridges on the Trans-Siberian Railroad. Until she was 16 years old, her family lived a nomadic life, never staying in a location for longer than 6 months. After marrying Valery, she made a career in the public sector. From a young age, she liked to stand out and be a little unconventional. When she was a teenager, at a time when the Soviet Union was isolated from the world by the Iron Curtain, she wrote to 20-some pen pals in countries ranging from China to Italy. In fact, the KGB investigated her because of the extent of her foreign contacts. She was allowed to travel abroad under the condition that she wouldn't contact any of her pen pals, and she continues to have a love for traveling abroad today. At home, she became the manager of public relations for the local hockey team, which became an outlet for her creativity. To this day, people remember the beautiful shows she organized around the Metallurg hockey team. On January 2nd, 2005, Evgenia immigrated to the United States after quitting her job in Russia to help raise Vera and Charlie's children, Matthew and Catherine Schmidt. Today, she lives in Cleveland, Ohio, and continues her cultural quest as head of a Russian poetry club and continued global travels. Vera Valerievna Borzova was born on January 27th, 1968 in Novokuznetsk, Russia. From a young age, Vera was a quiet dreamer. On most afternoons, she could be found reading books. Like her mom, she dreamed that one day she could travel, and like her dad, she dreamed that one day she would move to Moscow. After working several jobs and trying to figure out what to do in life following high school, Vera decided to attend medical school at the Kemerovo State Medical Academy. While fellow classmates were getting married and starting families, Vera was transcribing American medical journals into Russian in the local library. Incidentally, this was the same library where Vera met Charlie on November 4th, 1996. Charlie was in Russia at the request of the United States State Department to share air pollution information with the Russian government. He was invited to spend the evening socializing with a group of Russians that were learning English. Coincidentally, Vera decided to join the group that night. They engaged in a conversation that still goes on today. Exactly a year later, Vera arrived in New York City on the way to Cleveland.